meeting to order. This is the August 15th, 2018 meeting of the Scioto Valley Fire and Rescue Board of Directors. Please stand and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would you please call for roll and establishment of quorum?
Director Carnahan?
Present.
Director Woodbury?
Here.
Director Green?
Here.
Director Phillips?
Here.
Director Nixon?
Here.
We have quorum. Thanks so much. Well, Jim, we can acknowledge our first firefighter today.
Please have firefighter Sky Steve Gray come forward. I'll have you stand over here so that everyone can see you.
We want to acknowledge Sky for getting to the National Registry Yankee Basics. He was in the class last year. He's continued to plug forward with it, and as you've heard us say many times before with the other folks that have received the certification, it's not an easy feat, and we thank him for that. And there's some big things from it. And this, again, is not an easy certification to obtain, especially as the curriculum advances. So with that, we want to congratulate him on his EMT certification, and again, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to mess with the agenda a little bit, I'd like to go on to the approval of the meeting minutes, and has the board had a chance to review the minutes from the July 20th meeting? Deferred from June 20th and the July 18th, excuse me. Any questions about the minutes, and if not, is there a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
We have a motion from Director Nixon, is there a second?
I would second it. I was at
Okay, motion and second. All in favor to approve both minutes, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, approved, thank you. All right, I'm gonna move on. Okay with that? Okay. All right, we're gonna enter the public comment section, and we've got a great cast of people who have signed up to speak tonight, which is great. So I'll remind you that typically this is not gonna be a dialogue. The board will listen to any questions or comments, make notes, and then we'll have some a two-way dialogue, I should clarify. We'll have some discussion later on during the reports that deal with finance and operations. So I would ask that, because I know there's going to be a conversation from, sorry, not one of those, it's Kyle. We've got comments from John Murphy, who wants to go first. John is chair of the budget committee, and before you speak, John, the opportunity here is we're going to allow up to 30 minutes in total for a public comment. Each person will have 3 minutes allotted to their presentation. So
Sure.
You're up, John.
I'm John Murphy. I was the chair of the budget committee for the 2018-19 budget cycle. And I read the packet online every month and seen that we have this $700,000 projected shortfall. And I guess that makes me believe we're gonna have to borrow some money to get through the dry period financing. And the $700,000 we can recover from. I think we need to keep level heads. The board and the chief and the staff need just to come together and figure out how we're gonna get through it and do it together. But I have a few things you might consider. You might put on some type of a spending freeze, only do what's necessary till you get it sorted out amongst yourselves. You know, we might want to consider not going to any more conflags because it's taken so long for us to recover our money, and we're going to need the cash on hand through this. We might slow down sending some of our people to the training academy and spending that money also to keep cash on hand. And if you might consider forming, I don't know, a financial committee to sit with you guys and the staff, a few people that might help you think outside the box, how to gain our financial stability back. Then, and I think you really ought to consider next year at the budget cycle, bringing Kathy Taylor in to help Dina. A single budget is a daunting task. 2 budgets of this size is a really big task. And I think it would be good to bring Kathy in to help Dina. Dina has done the budgets this year, but she hasn't done a lot of large public entity budgets. And I think it would be a really good training exercise for her also. Thank you.
Great suggestions, thank you very much. All right, Marvin Tippler,
I'd like to defer to the end, please.
defer to the end.
Yeah, there's a couple of people who are going to read some statements, and I'd
Okay,
like
no
to
problem.
comment after that.
Chick Hammond,
Same here.
Kevin Richards.
That's me. I'm Kevin Richards. I usually watch these meetings on the recorded version because I can't get away with my kids. But I grew frustrated because it seemed any controversial letters or issues just got swept under the rug and concerned citizens like myself weren't getting the full information. So I'd like to read a letter from Kathy Taylor Consulting to Chief Langboard. Do you guys all have that already?
The
Just
one in our
looking
packet?
Huh?
Is it the one in our packet?
I'm guessing, yeah.
Okay.
So it says, in June, we entered into a contract primarily to migrate to a new accounting system. We also agreed that the books on the account would need to be cleaned up before that could be accomplished. Further, it was nearing June 30th, which meant the balance sheet accounts needed to be reconciled in preparation for the audit. I was aware in my proposal that the Saginaw Valley Fire did the accounting for a second entity, Western Lane Ambulance District. I assumed that meant one general ledger was in place with a subsidiary company. That was my misunderstanding. There are actually 2 completely separate sets of books with 2 completely separate charts of account. This in itself is not a serious increase. I believe that we could easily be done with one entity under the original budget of $15,000. Each takes about the same amount of time, but there is an economy scale. The impact of the project is probably $2,000 to $3,000. At this point, however, I predict that the total would be closer to $20,000 for both. The scope hasn't changed as much as the depth of the extraordinary inaccurate accounting for both entities, which has been this way for 2 years. You may recall that I mentioned in one budget meeting that I was surprised you received a clean, unqualified audit opinion last year. This is accountant speak, for the books are not auditable. The auditor did not arrange to perform a site visit before year-end, which they had typically done in the past. I suspect the auditor may have been considering their ability to perform your audit this year if the situation had not been improved. Auditors are required to maintain independence. Last year must have been problematic for the auditors based on my findings. I always expect to do analytical work when migrating to a new accounting system. The closing books at the year end, but the tasks I have listed below are not normal and are unusual. No balance sheets, accounts in the ledger as of 6/30/2017 were reconciled in preparation for the audit, i.e. checking account, reconciled bank statement, payroll, liability, agrees with the amount owed to the IRS, etc. No balance sheets, accounts were adjusted to the audit report as of 6/30/2017. As a result, all balance sheets, accounts were significantly out of balance as of 6/30/2018. To be clear, most were not just a small amount, most were so significantly inaccurate to be meaningless. For example, all liability accounts should have had a credit balance. Yours were all in debit balances. This is a red flag to any accountant. Furthermore, the situation had persisted for years. The consequences for each accounting error is an offset impact to revenue or expense. So in the past, profit and loss statements and budget to actual reports were inaccurate. The lack of...
I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. I'll only be respectful of others in our guidance in 3 minutes. This letter is a public record, and the board has it, and it's in the packet. I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak on something that we haven't seen, but I want to be also hold by our standard 3 minutes per presentation. So we have read this letter and have it.
You guys have, but does the public get it?
Oh, you bet. It's available online.
I'll give him my 3 minutes.
Okay.
I'll forfeit my 3 minutes so he can finish the letter. It's
And
only
you can
30
have
minutes.
mine too.
Okay, you bet. It is on the website for anybody who wants to read it.
Okay. The lack of adequate accounting is a long-standing problem, not just since 6/30/2017. To correct the situation, first recorded the journal entries the auditors provided last year, which helped some. However, the books still do not agree with the audit report. Eventually, we're forced to to balance sheet to agree with the audit report as of 6/30/2017. The offset was posted only to fund balance, not the underlying expense or income. All current year balance sheets accounts were reconciled to the actual of 6/30/2018, with adjustments going to actual accounts if possible or to reconciliation discrepancy. Formats for the journal entry posted were created, so going forward, the transactions are properly posted and balance sheets accounts continue to stay in balance and can be reconciled. Dina McClure worked with me in every step of this process. She is knowledgeable and capable of maintaining the general ledger in the future. She recognized problems, but few accountants would tackle such a chaotic set of books without teaming up with a CPA or retired CPA. At this point in my contract, we plan to migrate to QuickBooks Online later this month for both entities. Once that happens, it will make several days to update the chart of account titles and numbers. The new system will generate 2 to 3 page profit and loss, which can be condensed with one click to one page for board presentation. The beginning and ending fund balances will appear at the bottom of the profit and loss, similar to the Lane County budget, by excluding beginning fund balance from revenue and ending fund balance. And then this is financial planning should extend beyond 1 year's budget by exporting summary level profit and loss to Excel. You will be able to forecast additional years. I usually like to see 4-year history, current year estimate, budget, and 4 years of simple forecast. This is mostly show impact of current situation. I've worked with local governments in your situation before with financial planning, information, and discipline. You can immediately begin to improve your financial fate if it just requires information you have not had in the past. I just wanted to read that in so the public could hear it too, that don't come to these meetings.
Thank you very much. We have time, Ann, if you want to speak. Or if you
I
want-
just, I guess the question I want to ask is, and I don't know where the board looked at this. I sat on a board for 20-some years, and if I'd have seen all the mess that's in this, I would have asked for an independent auditor to come in and audit the books 1, 2, or 3 years in a row. This is inexcusable, and I'm appalled at the mess that it's in. And we've had this young lady over here that has come into this and is trying to make some kind of sense out of it. And this is it. I'm appalled and I'm disgusted. I also wonder what's going on with the ambulance district. So my thought is you bring in an independent auditor and do it soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan Jago?
Yeah, thank you. And I want to start out by saying I appreciate the time that all of you give. I'm well aware of it. I've sat on councils and sit on commissions, and so I know it takes a lot of your time. Is being involved and having retired from this fire department and still talking to firefighters and watching the board meetings and things like that. I don't attend them often, but as a public member and a business owner in town, one thing that I don't know and I don't get is where is the board's direction for this fire department? I understand, I think that what the chief's is, and that's to expand toward Swiss Home, Deadwood, and Absorb, and we've got some great training. I understand a lot of that's paid for by grant. I don't know if that grant pays for when the ladder truck goes out there and the wear and tear and the fuel and the hours that it's out of our district that we paid for or not. So I may be speaking out of turn, but I am curious if you're asking those questions and if the direction is Florence or expanding to Mapleton, Swiss Home, and Deadwood. And I work with them. They're a great group of people and they need support. But Florence pays the bills, and we should not be doing that on the whim of one individual. Thank you.
Thank you. Chick, did you want to?
I'll defer mine to Marvin.
Okay.
We're
doing well on time, so I'll have to give you all an opportunity to
Okay.
speak. So Martin, if you want.
Just- You're all elected officials. You're here to represent the public and look out for the public's money. I spent 35 years as a volunteer / paid person here. That 35 years, I can't tell you how many thousands of volunteer hours I put in to build a great department. It is absolutely appalling to me to see this department being destroyed the way it's being destroyed. You guys hire one person to manage this department. To need to borrow $500,000 to keep going the rest of this year is appalling to me. If you looked at the last 3 years' budgets, there should be over $1 million in the bank. If the money would have been saved like it was supposed to be saved, like the budget said it was, and there was a million excuses. Well, you know what they say about excuses. Where's the money? Tell me where the money is. What are we doing today that we didn't do 4 years ago for half the amount of money? You guys hire one person and charge them with running the district. I think it's very well proven how that district's been ran for the last few years. It's up to you guys to do something about it. You represent us taxpayers. Please do your job.
Thank you, Marvin. Chick, did you want to speak?
Well, I worked for ODOT. I was in charge of my budgets for Florence and Bonita for several years. And, you're dealing with public trust. You're dealing with taxpayers' dollars. And, the ODOT, there's a major checks and balance system all the way up to Salem that makes sure you do the right thing. And it looks like we need that here. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Was there anybody who did not sign up to speak in publicly who would like to make any statements this evening? If not, then we'll close the public comment section. Thank you. Let's go back to Chief, if you'd like to, then bring Kyle.
I'd like to have firefighter Kyle Roscoe come up. And this is a public recognition for his participation in a recent successful graduation from a fire training academy. So Kyle was sent up to the Washington State Fire Training Academy. We sent him there because there's no similar type of academy here in Oregon. And basically what he did during this 12 weeks was he, I guess, I don't know if relearned is the proper term, but he definitely expanded upon his knowledge. While he was there, it was a live-in academy, and he can tell you, he'd like to make some comments at the end here, was not an easy feat. As a result of that, he received several certifications, one of which is IPSAC Firefighter 2, which is the gold standard in firefighter certification in his hazmat operation. So we wanted to present him with that and congratulate him with that. Okay, the hand is in order for. And then most importantly, we wanted to recognize him for the Bulldog Award. And we've seen in the packet what the Bulldog Award is. It's an award that's given out every week. It's actually, who determines that it's given is actually the other recruits. So those are typically your toughest critics. And what it represents is that he demonstrated himself during a week, either by showing his grit, his determination to get through it. Nonetheless, he got it. There's only 12 given, and it's quite an honor. So if we get someone from our department that's a Bulldog, it says quite a bit about us. I'm just my friend Rescue. So good job on that, Kyle. Anything you want to say about your experience up there?
I just want to say that I am grateful to Chief Langford and Chief Dickerson for the opportunity to go. They were great motivators and really helped push me through this. I want to just thank them both personally for their leadership in our great district and the guidance that they've given me. So thank you.
Great. Congratulations. Before we move on, I would just say that since a lot of the public comment was about finance, I would encourage you to stick around the whole meeting, and when we talk about the financial presentation later on in the meeting, then you can hear a lot of the dialogue that's going on with the board and management. So, okay, on to Chief. You want to divert from the agenda a bit? Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd like to make an announcement to the board, and I understand there's some rumors flying around regarding this matter anyway. A couple of months ago, I was approached by a city in California to be employed as their fire chief, and wanted to let you know that I have accepted that position. My plan at this time, pending your approval, would be to work through mid-October. According to my contracts, is that I have 30 days but that's an extension of that. My recommendation is to assist with a smooth transition. So I'm sure that the rumors have been flying around because there was an extensive background check that was done. I don't know if any of you were contacted or not. The neighbors when I was growing up and high school teachers were contacted. So if you were, that was why it was being done. And we'll be making the announcement to the other members after this board meeting, and I have notified the ambulance board as well. So with that, if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to entertain them.
As Jim said, as Chief Director said, his contract requires 30 days notice, and he tendered his resignation notice to me today, offering 60 days. So I want to thank you for that. That will allow us to deal with succession planning, and either appointment of an interim chief, a plan for that. And so I don't think technically we have to have a board motion to accept this, but I'll ask the board if that was the case.
I don't think you have.
Okay. I've accepted the notice of resignations as board president, and Jim has tendered that. So, Jim, thank you for your service to Sciusville Valley Fire and Rescue and Western Line Ambulance, and we would personally wish you and your wife all the best. And so we'll have a lot of work and things to accomplish in the next 60 days for sure.
So what city?
Not releasing that at this point. They've asked that because they've not released it. So we'll tell you it's in the area of where I've worked before.
I have one.
So it's in the Central Coast.
All right. Okay. Well, let's go on to the financial review.
All right. I want to talk about a few things on the reports that are in the packet first. On the balance sheet, you will see a negative amount on the payroll checking account. That was a timing issue. Payroll hit this is a July balance sheet, but payday was on August 3rd. So on July 31st, the money that was transferred on August 1st. So just because this report says there's a negative amount, that was just in QuickBooks, and there was not a negative amount. It got posted the following day. Just wanted to clarify that. Also, a couple of things on the under other current assets. There's a large amount for other receivables. That was a journal entry to adjust books to the fiscal year audit report. Same with the 2 down prepaid expense. That was a journal entry. And then further on down under other current liabilities, there is the accounts payable other. Those are all audit adjustment journal entries that are, and so I just wanted to clarify that in case there was any question about that. Also under other current liabilities, the union dues, medical insurance, and PERS, those have been come out of payroll, and those in turn are being paid to the respective agencies. So we're on track now with payroll going correctly. I don't think there was anything else on the balance sheet. So I'll move over to the profit and loss. I put in the fiscal year budget just in an annual column. It's not spread out into 12 separate months. I'll be, again, we're just looking at July, which is the first month of the new fiscal year. So, but I'll be working with Kathy to get more streamlined financial reports like she mentioned in her letter. So I'm not sure we will see a 12-month breakdown. It may be more of a variance to where we look at the percentages as we move through the year, but I'll have more to report on that once I've worked with her a little bit more.
It will be helpful if there's anything that can be reported to the board that shows us how we're doing with budget year to date. So, I mean, it's gonna be difficult to say we've only spent $5 on a $30 budget, but we're only 1 month into it.
Yeah.
To find out that we're $100 over.
Right.
So there's a way to work with her and the accounting software to produce a budget to date and the results to date.
Yes.
I'd still like to see that.
Okay. I also wanted to mention that under income, the host grant reimbursement came in at $152,000 in July. And also today, I received notice from the Ventura Conflag money was deposited into our money market account. And that was $145,000. So, look at my notes here. Under personnel services, you know, we did have a couple firefighters go to Conflag. I'll be working with Chief Dickerson on getting those wages itemized on the P&L, separated out. Right now, they're included in their line item expenses, but they will be more clearly defined as Conflag.
Can I ask a question about that? And maybe directed at any of you. Do we have an option to say no if we're asked to participate? I mean, to John Murphy's comment, it would be a worthwhile discussion to say whether, I know it's a tremendous training opportunity for firefighters, but given the opportunity of having to wait 3, 4, 5, 6 months and beyond to get paid, it might not be a good idea.
Typically the state, do you know how long it takes for the state?
The state has 30 days from the close of the fire to pass. If it's an in-state conflag, and we send personnel from an in-state unit. That's where the California conflag was. It was completely new to the system. We hadn't traveled down there before. It took California extensively longer. So we will see as soon as the paperwork goes in. They're not accepting the paperwork from the fire that we did send people to yet, but the paperwork's complete. As soon as they send it, I get it notarized, and we're on the books.
You know, with that, just in addition, with the California fires, and I know that I've mentioned this earlier or in past meetings, but at the fire chief's level, there has been discussion with the OSFM, who is the one that sends us the state agency. It's the way that it works. So the governor declares an emergency, they then delegate it to the OSFM, who then contacts the local counties or fire defense board chief, puts together strike teams. With an out-of-state situation, very similar, but it goes from that state to directly to the state representative. We're not the only district that has been put in a bind with this, and I can tell you that there have been several fire chiefs that have grumbled about the amount of time that it's taken to reimburse nearly a year for the winter fire. So, with that said, I believe that it is being duly noted on California's end that if you want out-of-state assistance, that you can't put the neighboring state in some financial challenges with that. So I don't know. I can't tell you for a fact that that's going to change, but I can tell you that they are aware of that.
Great. Other questions for Dina on the July financials?
I still have a couple more.
Oh, excuse me, my apologies.
So in putting in the budget, I did notice a couple errors that were made during the budget process. One of them was in capital outlay, where my formula to add up the projects in capital outlay did not include the $16,000 for the turnouts. So that will need to be addressed sometime during this fiscal year. Also, the formula to add up the admin IGA was off by about $650. And there was one other expense for the safer grant position where a little over 1,000 was allocated to personnel services instead of materials and services. But I just want to be transparent about the errors that I found by, in working through this. So we'll be addressing those as we go forward. Work is still being done on the profit and loss report. The format will be revised to separate contingency and ending fund balance from the total expenses. So again, we will be addressing the reporting formats and working with the board to provide you with the information you need. Couple questions from Director Carnahan from last month. You questioned the day wireless expense for $8,000. That was a capital outlay expense for 20 new pagers. And you also were questioning the use or the getting fuel, the guys that were going to the academy to the Pacific Pride. Pacific Pride was being used for all the fueling, except for there were 1 or 2 times where the card got misplaced in the glove box, and so they did have to use regular gas on those 2 particular times. But was that your question?
Well, the question was, all fuel in any of the district vehicles need to go through either Pacific Pride or CFN because we don't pay taxes on it.
Yeah.
And it will save us a fair amount of money.
Right.
We're not gonna get rich off of it, but we will be able to save some money. And where we're paying the bill, that's, the taxpayers need that break.
Yeah, well, there were only a couple of instances on those trips back and forth where.
As I said, I saw it on there, I questioned it.
Yeah.
And this is something that I know it's an operations thing, but definitely we need to be at least proactive so that everybody knows.
All right, yeah, very good. I also wanted to mention, you'll see a letter in, when it gets to my reports, my admin report, but I did include a letter from Lane County regarding the tax revenue distribution. There was a big dispute with Comcast and there was a settlement, and so all districts got hit with a negative amount until that payout was distributed. It hit us, it hit us for about $4,000, but I did see some revenue coming in for this next month, so that has been taken care of. Next, I want to get to a little bit bigger issue in my report. I also mentioned that the balance sheet shows a $378,000 balance. $210,000 of that is set aside for capital reserve, which leaves $168,000 for operations. Reimbursements are expected, but more importantly, the beginning fund balance for fiscal year 18-19 came in at approximately $200,000 less than expected. I attribute this to inaccurate financial information and also being new to my position and learning the district finances. The timing of the late reimbursements added to the misprojection of beginning cash puts the district in a concerning financial position that requires board discussion. Again, like I said earlier, the conflag came in today at 145. So as I look at where we are at today, today's bank balance was about 129,000. With the conflag of 145, that puts us at 274,000. And one of my recommendations in this shortfall would be for the board to consider using some of the capital reserve money to avoid borrowing. So there's 210. That would put us to 473. or 483, which would get us through the next few months. That said, my projection of being, $500,000, 500,000 short, that reduces it down to closer to 200 to 300 short. So that's up for board discussion. We're also expecting a couple other grant reimbursements. 31,000 is still coming in from the SAFER grant and 26,000 coming in from the seismic grant.
Do we have any outstanding complag reimbursements on the horizon? Or are we
Just the current.
just the one?
Couple of things. We need to reopen the budget committee. And we, as I brought up last month, since we had the first reliable balance sheet to look at, that the actual ending cash for the fiscal year, or starting cash for the current fiscal year, didn't match the budget. We knew last month this was going to be the case. We probably would not for longer that we would have a shortfall. So with that said, the source of cash to fund the operations is less than believed, so the budget needs to be restated and reviewed by the budget committee and brought back to the board. That could be a simple abbreviated version, not all the bells and whistles, not all the attachments, just the budget. And that, as far as source of cash, should take into consideration whether there's a recommendation to borrow. And I'm of the opinion, again, just a vote on this board, that if the district borrows, we're going to pay interest, but we don't have a budgeted capital investment to be made in the next 6 to 12 months, that it would be in our best interest to use some, if not all, of the capital reserve, but that's a recommendation only, versus borrowing $500,000. But nonetheless, we have to reset the budget. I would say that I know you're not making a recommendation or bringing the resolution to borrow to the board tonight, that at the point that we do that, or that the management brings that to the board, it needs to come with a plan for how we're going to spend less. I know that we just can't cut our way into saving this much money. I mean, personnel costs are our greatest expense. But if we're going to borrow, we need to tighten the belt. Maybe the conflag is an answer. Anything else that we did not spend money on, I would ask that you bring to the board a line item as to what it is that we're going to cut and save. And it sounds like with the conflag money received today, we've got more than enough cushion to operate, and we don't have to go into a potential borrowing situation for almost a month. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Comments from the board, thoughts?
Well, we need to come.
Yeah. Director Carnahan called me when he got the packet and said, do we have an option to borrowing? We can't cut enough to create $300,000 or $400,000, so we don't have a choice, I believe. Whether or not we feel it's prudent or not to use the capital budget, that's a discussion with the board, but it certainly would save on interest. It might not be a bad idea to have a permanent line of credit, but any amount we borrow, then we have to talk about how we pay it back. And so that the problem doesn't go away. It only just kicks the can down the road a month or in the next fiscal year. So we have a choice to fill the funding gap. But I would not be willing to approve that funding gap without some understanding that we're doing everything else that we can to reduce what costs. Is there a question, John?
Just a comment, I think my term was up the end of June. I'd really like to be appointed to the budget committee again if you reconvene.
Okay. I'll make that motion right now.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor to reappoint John Murphy to the Fire District Budget Committee, please say aye. Aye.
Thank you.
We shall ask and it shall be approved. Thank you.
How do we know when our term is up? I have no idea about mine, but I certainly want to stay.
I
Okay.
can send out an email.
Please say right.
I don't know the answer. I think it's in the budget. We'll look it up and let you know. Ann.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you.
I'll let you know.
Anything else from the board?
No, I think, John had some good points about that, in terms of, making sure that we don't, it's not just about the manpower, it's about the financial responsibility. If we're gonna send people to help, that's great, but we've gotta be able to suck it up on our end. If we can't, then we can't send them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as simple as that. Unfortunately, this year, there's been a lot of activity in that area. We've wanted to help as much as we can, and we'll probably overextend ourselves. I mean, that's part of it, it's not all of it,
It's not.
but it's part of it.
There was a question during the budget committee process asked of the board if, we're committed to providing oversight to cut costs or watch costs, and of course we are. I will say that as the president of the board, our primary responsibility is to provide fire services and to the district and evaluate what that costs, be mindful of the costs, and then make sure the revenue stream aligns with that. Certainly a very unpopular thing to say, but I think next fiscal year, the revenue stream has to be evaluated. I mean, we may have an expense issue, but we may have a revenue issue. It's set for this year. I'm not going to debate over this tonight because the budget committee will review that and nothing we can do about it. But again, the idea of how do you cut $300,000 or $400,000 out of this budget, I don't think you do. That's just my opinion. So, but we will make every effort to try. So.
In answering Ann's question, your term runs through December 31st, 2019.
Thank you.
Great. Is there a question?
Yeah, when you send crews to off-district fire, so basically they're on somebody else's budget till they get back, right?
No, they're
Not all the time?
They're paid by SICE, by Valley Fire and Rescue until the district is reimbursed.
Until they're reimbursed. I mean, so it's basically just what I said. But you're actually making money on them because you're charging the fire X number of dollars, you're getting back equal or more amount from the fire. So the idea of not sending people, it's gonna be rough when you call somebody, we call somebody and say, hey, we need help. And we say, well, you didn't send nobody last time. So, I mean, working for ODOT, I would send my crews to help other crews to save my budget because I would work on their dime. So, I mean, so that's really not it's just getting the money back, but, it comes from California and it takes a long time to get it, I can understand.
Yeah, I mean,
It's like
there's no
dealing with
question.
FEMA.
There's the ethical and moral dilemma of
Yeah.
we have a right and a responsibility to help.
Yeah.
But if it cripples and compromises this district, we have to at least look at it.
I mean, I know we wait a year or longer for FEMA reimbursement sometimes, so.
Quick comment.
Yeah.
The district actually makes money on the apparatus. It may not profit on the employee. They actually save the employee's wages while they're gone because somebody else is paying it, so they do save the wages. But they make a substantial amount of money on the equipment. Dickerson, do you have any idea about how much we made on equipment last year?
It depends on which fire. I can tell you that for a type 6 apparatus, portal to portal for an hour, which is the small fire pickups, is $50, and it's $100 for a type 1, which is our main structure engines.
That's 24 hours a day, the entire
24 hours a
time.
day, the entire time they're gone.
So you're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a day.
Thousands and thousands, and then quite a few thousands went back into putting them back together when they got back.
That's because in large part the tires should have been replaced a long time ago and were all had to be replaced. But I would like, and I'll throw one comment out real quick, and keep in mind that the firefighters that go on these not only get experience, but a lot of them really rely on the income. So, they go on fires to make income because there's a lot better money there than there is here. So, because they're on a 24-hour clock.
Well, and let it be known that the board's not taking any action. This is a discussion as to what might be a consideration to how to balance the budget and be more proactive or fiscally responsible in the coming fiscal year. So we'll look for management to make a recommendation to the board of how that is best balanced. So.
Ultimately, we have to put the money up front for them to go there, but if that puts us in a bad position in the short term financially, it's not a win.
But that's not what put us in trouble.
No, I'm not saying that's the only thing. I'm just saying if we don't have the money for it to put up front, then we shouldn't be sending it if we can't.
Money was missing.
I would like to make a one more comment before you approve the dollar amount of bills paid. In Kathy Taylor's letter, it is described that there is additional work to be done. And there is an additional, the original contract was for 15,000. She's estimating an additional 9,000 to complete the job. And I would like the board to make a decision on that.
Yeah, well, I make a motion, we approve the additional expenditure, this work has to be done, we have no choice. So,
I will second that.
we have a motion and second. All in favor to approve the $9,000 in additional expense, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much.
And for clarification, not only, but 4,500 of that will be assigned as long as expense. The remainder will be the ambulance district.
Can I make a comment to that, please?
Yes.
Yes, please.
And you guys all know me, but we're, the IGA, correct me if I'm wrong, and this is contracted services for admin, but it's continually been split down the middle for services that haven't been provided. And I'm just saying, the concern to that is that, again, $4,500 is coming out of the budget for Western Lane to pay for this. That's all I'm saying.
And I'm going to address actually the IGA later in the meeting, so that will be relevant in the conversation. Okay, anything else? So we need to review the expenditures for the month. $263,224.93, and then we'll appropriate transfers. First of all, any conflicts to declare? Oh, John.
I have a question. Check number 26335, Ellen and Curtis and Sons for $23,075.02. Was that for turnouts? That was after that's in this fiscal year, not last fiscal year?
The billing came in after the fiscal year turnover. It was ordered multiple months when we took delivery, it was after.
Okay, we knew we were in trouble last month. That's the type of expenditures we cannot afford to have. That's all I
All right, so is there a motion to ratify the expenditures for the month?
And Director Cronin, just information, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but that, some of that money, or leave all of that, some is reimbursable through the SAFER grant. So we currently, not to get off track too much, but we currently have a reimbursement into them. As soon as that is approved, then we will be including that. You know, about how much of that is reimbursed?
26,300.
Of it all, total.
All right, I'll again ask for a motion to approve or ratify the expenditures.
I'll make a motion.
Motion and second. And motion and second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you very much. There was not any old business on the agenda, correct? That we need to deal with. So on to staff reports. Chief, you're up.
The seismic grant, the work is completed. We're in the process of getting the final inspection. I received some of that today and submitting for the final reimbursements on that. Just kind of hit the big items here. Fires and significant calls. We've had recently, the past month, we had several serious calls on fires. We had two decent working structure fires. One was a complete loss out off of Sandrift. It was one that had the insurance investigator determined that it started in the wall heater, had gone up in the attic, and it was discovered a little late. By the time the first arriving unit was there, it was actually through the roof. So unfortunately, there was significant damage in there. The other thing I think I'll throw in there, and this is just I guess a little bit of a gee whiz comment, but I recently, actually yesterday, I flew from San Jose to Seattle, traveling back and forth. And during my travels, I went as far south as San Luis Obispo, which is about close to 200 miles south of San Jose. With that in mind, there was smoke from San Jose to Yeah, I've never seen that before. I think that's significant. If you look at an active fire map, it's incredible. So I don't really, I just present that information to you. It's something I've never seen in my career, and I don't know that it really means anything other than just kind of a wow. Conflagrations, I think we discussed that. Let's see, we have a disaster expo going on the weekend of August 25th. I'll be doing a presentation there to the public on wildland fires, you know, some of the things that we're doing as a district to help prevent that, prepare for that. The rescue and the tender have both been delivered to Swiss Home Deadwood. They actually used the rescue on a call and they appreciated it. Finally, not yesterday, Tuesday, but the week before, there was a National Night Out. Both the ambulance district and the fire district participated in it. That was because of the generosity of the city for allowing us to do that. So, Director Woodbury, I know that you're also a council member. We thank you and we appreciate. Please pass along to Chief Turner that we appreciate being able to partner with him. There were a lot of people there. They had like 2,000 hot dogs and they ran out of them. If that's any indicator. Yeah. But the intent of this was to have some interaction between first responders and children and the public, and I think that was accomplished. So it was a success. With that, I will open it up to any questions that you have for me.
If I could just add a comment, I was in attendance there at the National Night Out. We estimate the crowd being about 3,000 people. The amount of children that were there that took part in it was considerable. And it went very well. I was very proud of Sykeston Valley Fire and Rescue, all that attended and participated in entertaining the children and just being seen and talking to the crowd. I think it was very well done.
Great. Other questions for the chief on his report? Okay. Operations?
All right, for the last month, as Chief talked about, we were in 4 pretty major fires. Our calls totaled up to 78. That's a big month for us. That's kind of above and beyond. Total calls for 2018 from calendar year is 386. In 2017, we ran 269. That's an increase of 117 calls. July property loss, we did have 1 total loss and another pretty extensive fire, so 330,700. Puts our total loss at over 1.3 million for the year. We did have 2 rather large losses that have jumped that number. Average number of firefighters per incident is down 6, but we've had some different responses. Puts our average down 1 for the year, and our average response time for July was 8.5 minutes, which excludes out of district response and code 1 responses. I included some data on some graphs as requested by Director Green. Any questions on those graphs as we look through them?
Oh, we love colors, thank you.
Yeah, I tried. I think the biggest thing to take away from it is looking at the past 5 years statistically. Our call volumes are up considerably. We're at a 43% increase for this year. Following the trends, we're looking at 650 to 675 for the year if we continue on this path. Also to be noted is the percentages of calls are actually right in where they should be. The comment was asked if we were running more EMS than we're actually running pretty much the same percentages that we always are. We're just being simply called to service more. A lot more calls, a lot more runs. Of those runs, 19 of which were daytime paid staff, and then the bulk of that was covered by volunteers and residents. 33% were covered actually by residents alone. Firefighter Roscoe is back. He's doing a great job. He's hustling faster than ever. Come back fit and ready to serve. Prevention, Captain Miller is extremely busy. We've got burn restrictions in place and lots of investigations. He's getting some awesome firsthand experience. We're getting ready for an October Academy. We've got 19 currently on the books. Bo's report has some stuff included for that. Seismic work is complete, and planning for the resident quarters as well as some of the outlight stations will be happening soon. That is in the planning stages. Station 1 is getting an assessment of the HVAC system, which is 7 years overdue for getting looked at seriously. The new hose and appliances are being put into place, working pretty well. Putting in some new hose loads and training people, so it's a lot of fun. As Chief said, Rescue 4 and Tender 8 are no longer, and Engine 1 had some pretty serious work completed. The heat was running full time, so we had an engine plug that was acting up. We're watching Engine 2 as their sister engines for anything to come up with that. We had Sky Cedar Leaf Gray. We have more and more. We only have 2 people left to complete. Another one is in the audience, and he's got his retest scheduled. And the Standard Recovery Committee is being assembled and plan on for next month seeing the Standard Recovery come back to you with committee approval. Any questions?
Questions at all?
I thought it was interesting looking at the graphics and the dynamics of the kinds of calls that have coming from just over the last, from 2016, in terms of fires compared to car accidents, compared to medical assists, compared to, I mean, the dynamics of what we're doing is definitely changing according to these. Yeah, I mean, you can tell just in the kind of calls that we're getting. Lots more MBAs, a lot more medical assists. It's interesting to see it all laid out like that.
These trends will be helpful as we go into strategic planning again and evaluate what the budgetary needs are, because it is different. So great. We've covered your report already, right? Anything else to add?
I just had those few little things right at the end. Evaluations have been done for all the admin staff, and I'm working with all of them on accounts payable, human resources, life med, Western Lane deposits. So we're really working together well and getting things done right.
Yeah. Is there a way that you all commit to a timing as to when we can have a revised budget to bring the budget committee together? I think timing's of the essence. If a borrowing is going to be a need, what do we think is that a possibility of doing within the month?
We'll do what we can.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And then we can call for a special budget committee meeting to review that. Okay, I think I wanted to say one thing before we go on to new business, excuse me. Kathy Taylor, who provided the letter, and the board packet is public record. It may not be distributed to everybody kind of directly, but please look on the website of Sykesville Valley Fire and Rescue. And so content like that letter and everything else that's shared with us is made available to you. One thing that Kathy said that Kevin read was that this issue of the financial condition has been a multi-year problem. I would say I mentioned last month about the starting cash of the budget not matching actual cash. I can almost guarantee that was the case last year and the year before that. So with that said, and I'm trying to be as non-biased and as centrist as possible. I do appreciate over the course of 12 months, and I say this as Jim's on the way out the door by his doing, that we've tried to take some steps to identify where the weaknesses are. It's been compounded with a lot of effort, changeover in staff that probably before Nina were way over their head and what they were trying to accomplish, interim staff that really didn't get anything accomplished, and now Kathy really helping to get this done. So I appreciate Kathy giving you a shout out too, that Nina knows what she's doing. Once we get this general ledger cleaned up and have a clean starting point and have a sense of we can actually accurately budget going forward, then it'll be fine. But we need to get there. So, and I appreciate all the effort by Chief Langborn and by Dina and everyone else who's been involved. So, new business. I just a bit of history. Prior, I think a year or so, there was an IGA committee that was formed. And this was formed as a population of both members of both districts, the ambulance district and the fire district, along with some citizens. And I think the question was, you know, it came up, of course, during last year's campaign and before that, what is the economic benefit of the IGA? And it's difficult to say, and everybody's kind of trying to put their fingers on what it's creating as far as savings. Honestly, I think the biggest savings is the synergy and the operating efficiency. But that committee was disbanded because of really not really accomplishing much. And the two boards decided to form a IGA committee that is comprised of two members of the SVFR Fire and Rescue and the Western Line Ambulance. And so that committee had its first meeting last month, and we're meeting again next week. Is that what you believe? Our board is represented by Director Hickson and myself. The ambulance is Director Farnsworth and Director Yesney. And we're going to be proposing next month to both boards a charter that identifies what this committee's purpose is. And I want to kind of read, it's basically complete. We're going to go over it. I think Ned hasn't looked at it yet. You'll see it if you haven't already. But some of the responsibilities of this IGA group, I should clarify too that it has no authority, can't make any policy decisions, it would make recommendations to the two respective boards of directors. To create guidelines for measuring the IGA effectiveness. That's a broad statement, but that includes financial effectiveness and most importantly, operational effectiveness. Review actual performance and comparative guidelines to ensure the IGA is performing efficiently and as intended. Provide a forum for creating suggested improvements for the IGA. Develop a succession plan and job description for the chief director for sponsoring boards to approve. That's now a relevant task that this committee will take on, and we'll evaluate as to what that position needs to look like going forward. Perhaps identical to what it is today, perhaps it'll be changed. Facilitate job performance reviews of the chief director by utilizing and compiling direct input from members of both sponsoring boards. Develop a contingency plan in the event the IGA is terminated. There's a lot of conversation about the value of the IGA. Do we have it, do we not? We better sure as heck think about if we don't, what are we going to do? Because the ambulance district, I can guarantee you, will have to operate much differently than it does today. But we should be prepared. If we want to disband it, what's the plan? So this committee will bring a plan as to what it will look like. Perform other functions that may be delegated by both boards, and then communicate committee activity of the IGA effectiveness and recommendations for improvements back to both sponsoring boards. Both boards then are going to meet on a joint basis once a quarter. So next month, the Western Line Ambulance and SVFR Fire and Rescue will meet together. We met during strategic planning, but we'll meet and we'll make some sort of presentation of this charter. So I just want to throw this out there as a statement. Again, the board's not approving this tonight. We'll bring it back to the meeting in September for approval. Any questions or comments from the board about that?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
In the light of everything that has been going on here tonight and kind of the difficulty with the finances here, and me being on the ambulance board for many years, I had just a few words to say about it. I think both agencies need to stand alone. I don't see this being taken care of quickly, and this lady over here needs to get this house in order. We've got folks at the ambulance district can take care of it just like it was the past 20 years. That's my comment.
Thank you, thank you. As I stated, that will be evaluated, and I think, again, if that's a consideration, which is a possibility, the IGA can be terminated. How do we function going forward? So we need to have that plan in place. So, great, thank you very much. Correspondence in the file. We have our joint meeting again scheduled for September 19th, 6 p.m. will be a joint meeting of the Southeast Valley Fire and Western Lane, as I mentioned, on the 19th here in this room, I believe in this room. That's it. Is there at this point a need for executive session?
I've got some things to say.
Okay, okay.
I don't know if you want me to say them in an open meeting or not.
Well, that's kind of a judgment call.
It has to fall under one of the ORS statutes.
Yeah, there's a specific statute as to, and so if you believe it falls into that, then we should enter into executive session.
I think we need to go into executive.
Okay, very good.
Session.
And what ORS statute would that be under?
Employment?
I don't have my exact definition of that. That's usually for disciplinary action.
It could fall under that, yes. I need to say some things. You know, for over 60 years, this department has never borrowed money to do dry period financing. Ever. It makes me absolutely sick that we're in this position and the things that led up to it. And I think we need to take some action.
Okay?
Okay? And I would like to discuss this further in executive session.
Well, we'll have to document, I don't have the ORS in front of me, but if we feel like it falls under staff disciplinary, then we can certainly document that. Is that correct?
I believe it's ORS 1926602A.
Okay.
But also if that, as I recall, if it's towards a particular individual, that individual has the right to have an open hearing versus an executive session.
Okay?
Well, if we could legitimately, under Oregon statute, enter into executive session, then I would like to do that.
But the person it's about should be notified that it's about them, and they would have the right to say if it's in, decide whether, I mean, if they want it in open session, they have the right to have it in open session.
Okay. Director Carnahan, do you want to?
Chief Langborg, would you like an open session or in closed session?
Do executive session.
Okay. Then we shall do that. We're going to enter an executive session. The meeting will be reconvened only to adjourn it afterwards, so you're welcome to come back for me to say adjourn.
What if there's a decision to be made?
If there's a decision to be made, then we'll announce that in open session, yes.
Okay.
Okay? All right, we entered into executive session under ORS 192.610 and 690, sections 2B, which happens to be discussing performance evaluation and/or disciplinary action of an employee. And so we discussed with Chief Director dissatisfaction with the current financial situation, and there was no action taken at this point. So with that, the meeting is adjourned.